Okay, so now we're done with the template. Let's go ahead and start modeling this piece. So I'm going to start with the front. So I'm actually just going to quickly hide my my back template, and I'm also going to go ahead and hide my size display, so I can just work with the front, side, and top views. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be matching this stuff up so that it all syncs up between the three pieces of the car. So I'm going to go ahead and create a plane. So I'm just going to click on the Poly Modeling tab and click a plane right there. Then I can pull that up. And then I'm going to rotate this. Fortunately, because I have the discrete rotate, it allows me to rotate pretty easily, so I can line it up with the 90-degree axis. I'm going to scale this out a bit. And I'm going to assign a material to this existing material, the transparent test, and that'll allow me to work with that. It looks like that's roughly correct. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the polyplane. I'm going to change the subdivision's width to 1 and the subdivision's height to... Actually, sorry, I'm going to change the subdivision height to 1 and the width to 2. Because I actually want to have only one side of this. I'm going to work with the that side. So I'm going to go ahead and delete the other side. And then that'll mean that I have the pivot right here on this side. But I want to actually work with this as a... basically modeling two sides at once. So I'm going to go to Edit, Duplicate Special, Options, and I'm going to select Instance, and then I'm going to scale negatively on X. And then if I hit Apply, you'll notice that it creates another copy of this piece. This is really important, because otherwise you would spend a lot more time modeling this piece than you need to. So I would just suggest you get in the habit of using Duplicate Special for anything that's symmetrical like this. And then you can combine them and all that at the end. So I'll go ahead and close this out. And then what you'll notice is that if I grab a vert here and I start moving it around, it will actually apply to the other side as well. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and do kind of like a quick and dirty job of this. So I'm going to just be working on the basic idea of like the shape of the bumper here. And fortunately, because we have the three views, we can see that fairly easily. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we're matching this up. By the way, the modeling process that I use for this is basically what's referred to as strip modeling. It tends to be a pretty good workflow for complex models. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select edge, and then I'm going to extrude that edge. And I'm just going to pull this out to make the general shape up to about where the front grille with the lights ends. And I'm actually going to go ahead and bring this piece down to here. And then I want to switch viewports really quick so that I can make sure that these are matching in the top view. So I'm going to pull these verts up here, grab these verts over here, slide them back, grab these verts over here, and also slide those right over there. And then I can also check this in the side view as well, just to make sure that everything's fine. So far, it looks like we're doing pretty well, so that's good. Now, what I want to do then is I want to switch to the side view, and I'm actually going to extrude this back here. And actually, it looks like this is a little, maybe not the ideal tool for this, because it looks like it's kind of angled. So I can just switch to the global extrude. And I'm probably going to extrude this here. And I'm going to kind of slide this extrusion here. And then what I want to do is I want to grab the edge at the top. And I'm going to extrude that up. And I think I'm actually going to make... I do a lot of editing verts with these so that they tend to work pretty well. Then basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to be gradually kind of extruding a fan over this section. And so I could do a wide variety of edits. There's and right now I'm kind of going for like the base shape, and then we'll modify that to make sure that it accommodates what we're working with. So I'm going to turn off the discrete rotate real quick. So hold down the E key, left click and hold, toggle the discrete rotate there, because I got to make sure that I can position this actually where I want it. And I can see that roughly I'm getting a little bit of that shape there. Now, I'm going to probably want to do this in a few different sections, so I don't want to be too crazy with doing everything all at once. And I think that actually one thing that might be a good idea is just to make sure that we're making the pieces that we can bridge accurately. So, let's see. Okay. And it looks like actually just as kind of a little safety check here, let's go ahead and grab these verts and make sure that they're actually extending out in the side where they're supposed to be. Now, you can do a lot of different things with modeling of this type of piece, and I often try to get like the main pieces together, and then I try to bridge them together or kind of find the places to merge them. So like, for example, right here would be a good option for that. So I could go ahead and create another plane, increase the size of that a bit, change my, I'll have a subdivision's width of 2 and a height of 1. I can go ahead and place this roughly where I want it to be for this, this kind of hood detailing. Right click, select face. Oh. Make sure I'm deleting that face there. I can grab this piece. I can go to edit, duplicate special, and it'll automatically pick the option that I last had. And then I can slide this down here. Slide this vert over to here. And make this vert roughly right about there. Now it looks like this this template is like a tiny bit off from the center, so I'm just going to roughly, very slightly nudge that. Okay. So then I can switch to my perspective view real quick and make sure that I'm going to grab all of these, both of these parts. They're a little hard to select, so I'm just going to drag a box and then control click the template to get rid of it. And I can pull it up to the side view here. And then I can select my verts. And I can grab these verts and drag them down. Now this would be a good example of like, I can't actually quite get the shape that I want with this low of a polygon count. So I can go to insert edge loop, and I can just add a basic edge loop there. Then I can switch to the verts. I can pull that up. And we'll probably end up doing this a lot more with different parts of the model, just to make sure that we have the details that we need. But for right now, I just want to do it a little bit so that I have a rough idea of the overall shape of the car. And so it can be a good idea to kind of do this in segments because there's a lot of additional benefit you can get out of just basically working with whatever the shape of the actual car is, trying to match that as closely as possible. And you can either match it 100% or you can match it and then kind of go for like finer divisions over time. So it's sort of up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and extrude this piece, this edge down, and then I'm going to position those verts where they go. Gonna have to do the top, then also do it in the side. I think this will be okay. Okay, and then I want to make sure that these are actually positioned where they should be. But by the way, I'm actually going to go ahead and assign my transparent material to this one as well. Okay, so by the time we get to over here, basically it's like right up there. And it can be a little hard to see. Let's see. I think it's like, yeah, it's pretty close. Okay. And if we need to look at some additional references, that can be helpful. That's where it's useful to like look at our actual car references so we can kind of see, you know, what the shape of that hood design is. And I think we're actually pretty close. Obviously this one's a different model, but I think that's pretty close to actually the shape that we've got here, so that's good. Yeah, okay. So if we want, actually, what we could do here is we could just finish making the hood itself. So I'm going to select this edge, this edge, this edge, this edge, and this edge. And I'm going to then extrude those, switch to the global setting. And I can move this up a little bit. Switch to vertex. So hopefully, if you haven't done this kind of workflow before, you can sort of see what the advantages are of following this kind of process, because like ultimately this is kind of coming down to just like connecting lines, right? So you don't have to do anything too crazy. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add another edge loop here so that I can make a little bit more of an accurate curvature. Now obviously it's not going to be perfect, but you can always improve it later. And it's cool too because when you're selecting verts in an orthographic view, you can just basically grab the vert and move it around wherever you need to position it, so you don't even have to worry too much about the tool use. Okay, so let's see. We got that there. Looks like these actually need to come down. I might actually scale these a little bit. This looks like they're too high. But we can always take a look in the different viewport options. And here, actually, I think that this is probably the problem here, is that we need to actually separate this because it needs to actually come down further. So I'm going to grab this one here. We'll make a little bit more curvature here. Small tweaks. Okay. And this is the part that actually probably needs the most tweaking. So I'm going to quickly go to the mesh tools and select the multi-cut tool. And I'm going to quickly cut this here. And I'm actually going to select this triangle piece and delete it. We'll go in and we'll pick up all the additional features a little bit later. Let's see. But yeah, so we'll end up kind of wrapping that stuff around a bit because it kind of goes inside and under a bit. So okay, we've got the kind of basic hood shape there. Now let's get the kind of like, I think it's often a good idea to focus on getting like the key bits in place and then elaborating on that. So let's see. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move. I'll just keep extruding where we're at here. So let's go ahead and extrude and make sure we're extruding globally. If you want to, you can go for like broader strokes with your extrusions, and then you can come back later for like another pass at this. So, and that's often a good idea, is to get like kind of the basic shape in place, and then go, and then you can make the transitional shapes a little bit more easily by just making an insert edge loop here or there or something like that. Now I'm currently building this in such a fashion that I'm not really following. Well, I think that essentially this is like kind of following this outer shape, and I'm going to need to make additional divisions here so that I can match the extra details. Yeah, so we're kind of following this top section. I think we're probably going to end up having to modify this shape a little bit so that it looks more consistent. But let's see. Go ahead and get maybe a little bit more here, one more here. And we'll add more as we go. So switch to vertex. I'm going to nudge each of these to roughly follow the shape here. Okay. All right. So this is obviously rough. We're going to need to do more with this. But okay, sure. I think that works okay. All right, so now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to extrude this edge. And I'm going to make this roughly follow the angle of this piece here. Now, you could also model the door separately, but in most cases, the shape of the door on a car is actually pretty close to the overall shape of the main body of the car. So I think that's actually going to be a little bit. That'll be fine. Actually, I think I'm probably going to delete this edge here. So I'm going to shift right click, delete edge. And just so that I can, because I can go ahead and smooth this stuff out later, but I want to make sure that I have kind of a uniform distribution here. And then, yeah, so okay. So I can go ahead and insert edge loop to line up with the door. I can make, I know I'm going to have to, basically I try to look at wherever the major lines are on the piece, and I try to apply those as best I can. So I can also extrude and then kind of snap together. So I'm going to like extrude this edge here, hold down the vert sorry, hold down right click, select vertex. And then I can hold down the V key, and then I can snap that vert onto that other vert. I don't want to do that on this one, though. And, okay, cool. And then I could also do the same thing, like I can extrude this edge, for example, and I could merge those verts. Now, the only thing you got to watch out for when you're selecting verts in this fashion is you got to make sure that you actually do merge the verts afterward, because they won't actually be welded. So I can go ahead and select these verts, for example, and go to Edit Mesh, Merge to Center. I can select Merge to Center here, so I can hit the G key, and I can do the same thing just to make sure that those are like merging into the same space. Okay. And then I probably want to take a look and see exactly where this is. Oh, no. Dang, actually, I didn't mean to merge those to center while selecting the one on the other side, so that was not good. Okay, I gotta make sure that I don't do that, because so I'm gonna have to deselect these verts here. So I'll select these, and I'm gonna merge with a low threshold, so that it's so that it'll just merge the ones that are near each other. Then I can also make sure that I'm snapping this one. Hold down the V key, snap there, and then I can select those, and I can go to Edit Mesh and select Merge. Now, this threshold may vary, but since I know what size my model is here, I know this threshold will be pretty accurate. It's usually in whatever the unit measurement is. So if you have centimeters, like 1 will actually be 1 centimeter, whereas 0.01 will actually be like 1% of a centimeter. So that usually works out decently well. So, okay, so then I can see here, I'm roughly on the right track, but I just need to make sure that this this angle follows the side of the car a little bit more. And then we'll just make sure that we're keeping consistent with that. So, so I'll select these edges here and extrude over to the edge of the wheel here. Now I could have. I think that honestly, I'm kind of regretting the decision of deciding to do it like as broad strokes as this, because I may actually want to go back and make these details a little more specific, but I think that we can reasonably do that with where we're at, so I'm not too worried about that. So okay, so I'm going to go ahead and grab this edge, extrude, make sure I'm following the overall shape. Again, I'm keeping consistent that like the piece that went over here is also being extruded over the same section. On the back side, and I'm going to extrude this. I can go ahead and add divisions where I need them later. So I'm gonna position that right around there. And okay. Then I can go ahead and start adding some edge loops. Probably going to need at least a couple here. Just make sure I'm kind of following the shape that I want. I'm actually probably going to add another edge loop here, so I hit the G key. Just so I can roughly match the shape that we're dealing with here. Yep. Okay. All right, so we're getting there. So now I know that this is actually going to be a little bit involved, but I think that like what's important to note about this is that this kind of process is utilizing the same types of tools that you would normally use when you're creating like much simpler models. But by just being more methodical about it, you can actually go through the process of making fairly elaborate models much, much, much more quickly than you would usually think that you would be able to. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this vert and kind of slide it up here. Position that there a bit. Okay. And then I'm going to start extruding this back. And I think there's going to be a couple of details that I'm going to want to be mindful of. So, I'm going to select... Yeah, so I know there's a little bit of a bump here, so I think I'm going to kind of anticipate that. And I'm going to position this edge a little bit up. And I'm going to place another edge here, roughly aligned with where I know I'm going to need that extra dimension. Okay. And then, okay, so then we'll go ahead and grab this edge, this edge, and I'm going to hit extrude, switch to global, and I'm going to pull this roughly to right around here. And okay, and then I know that I need to have this piece positioned there and there so that I have rough shape going on. All right, and so I've got, I'm getting a little bit of like the basic shape of the Camaro. Let's go ahead and make sure that our top view is still good, and then obviously there's a couple of edits we need to make. So I'm going to grab all these verts here, start by roughly sliding those over, grab these here, let's see, slide these over here, slide this one over here, make sure that we're just generally conforming to the shape of the piece itself. I know we're going to have to, we're actually going to have to start positioning some of these top verts a little bit further inward. So I'm going to grab all of these verts along the top edge here. And I'm going to make sure that those are slid back. And then I can nudge those a bit to make sure that they're following the contour a bit more carefully. Okay. All right. So, all right, well, I think we're definitely on the right track. Let's actually go ahead and do the same thing over here, because I think we can also look at the front view, and we can see that there's definitely some verts that are not quite where they should be. Okay. So we're doing okay so far. Not too bad. Can't complain. Let's go ahead and I'm gonna shift gears for a second and go in the direction of making the roof of the car, because I think that that's a good piece to work with. So I'm gonna kind of ignore this detail just for right now. If I look at my my photos, let's see. I don't know if I have any good, like really good photos of that top piece. It's it's basically a divot. So there's like a divot indentation there. So I'm not going to worry about that part right now. I'm going to focus primarily on just the core pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and create another plane, and I can resize it here if I want to. If I wanted to make it like a 50 by 50 plane, I can make the width 2, the height 1. Hit the spacebar real quick, and then I can just kind of lift this up so that it's very loosely at where the roof of the car is. Then I'll go ahead and delete that other face on the far side. I'll go ahead and select that piece, right-click, assign existing material, transparent test, and then I'll go ahead and do a duplicate special on this one as well. And then basically I just want to start positioning this so that I can make... I'm actually going to I'll probably follow the outer line here, and then we'll make the inner line later. So one thing that I think is generally a really good idea is to focus on making the overall like large shapes first, and then making the kind of subdivisions that would be necessary for this, so that you can get additional accuracy. Because it's much easier to say like, okay, if this vertex is at this height and this vertex is at that height, then I can make like tiny variations in that to kind of bridge the gap. But so like, for example, here, it's much easier for me to say, okay, I have to take this vert and I have to move it down here, and I have to take this vert and sort of, let's see, look at the side view, and move it down here, as well as taking this one, moving it down here. And then I can start seeing a little more clearly like where I actually need to bridge the gap. So, for example, I can go ahead and select the Insert Edge Loop tool, and I can make one edge here because I know that I definitely need to have a division right there, because it's roughly where the car lines up with the door. So it might be useful to have. Kind of position this, and then essentially I can split the difference with the Insert Edge Loop tool to make sure that I'm getting the pieces that I need while not drastically changing the overall shape. And actually, you know what? I think it might actually be pretty easy to make that that division in the roof, since we can see it here. So let's go ahead and I'm going to make an Insert Edge Loop. I'm going to add one here. Add one there. I'm probably going to add a loop right around there. So I can grab these verts, shift those up a little bit. I'm going to grab this vert, shift it up. Grab this vert, make sure it's roughly positioned in that space. Okay, so that's not too bad. We can obviously make more smoothness here. So I can start by doing like one a little bit here. Now I am doing a decent amount of eyeballing with this, but I think it tends to work out reasonably well. So usually I get close to the effect that I want with this style. So let's see. Okay, let's go ahead and grab some of these verts at the top here. Making like micro adjustments to make sure that these are matching the shape that was intended. Oops. And I'll probably add one more division here so that I can get kind of a general softening of the transitions here. But you can see how it's actually generally easier to go in and kind of split the difference once you've gotten the far ends and the core shape in place, right? So let's see. All right, cool. All right. So it's starting to come together. It's not too bad. So let's go ahead and start dealing with the parts that we need for the actual frame so that it can come down and make the connection to the main body of the car. And in this case, I think that it needs an extrusion of the edges on the side here. So I'm going to go ahead and extrude those. And I'm going to extrude them so that they roughly match what we've got here. I'm going to move that vert to line it up. Actually, this one is pretty close to lining up already. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this edge, extrude that out, switch to global, extrude that all the way down here. And then we obviously will be able to more easily position that part of the frame down as we basically slide it down. I'm going to do the same thing here, actually, because it looks like we need a couple of edges. I'm going to focus on just the one. Extrude this one out. And I'm gonna do this one in kind of a broad stroke, and then we'll probably split the difference. Okay. All right. So then, first obvious thing is I need to take these and I need to actually start moving them down to match the shape of the car. So let's see, get this one here, this one here. I'm gotta take this one and move it here. And you can see that because we already had certain other parts of this kind of predetermined, like we don't need to guess about what the other axis is because we already essentially set that up, so we don't actually have to make the decision there. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add another division here, so I can move this, and actually that looks pretty good. So I'm just gonna smooth out some of the edge flow here, and you can also do that by, like, for example, you can scale edges, and then you can kind of rotate them. So if you scale, you can tighten them, and then I can manually alter some specific ones if I think they're not quite where I wanted them. And I'm also doing that here on the side. I'm kind of just like making the separation between these two edges, like there's more of an even spacing between these. Okay. And then I also need to make sure, take a look in my 3D view so I can see this. Okay, well, and I focused on the pieces that I did because we're really already starting to see the shape of the car actually, like, manifest itself, which is actually really nice. It's also really rewarding. So while you're working on your piece, to actually be able to say, like, oh, I'm actually, like, seeing the car sort of show up. That's pretty cool. Okay, so let's go ahead and we got a couple additional, like, main features to put together. One of them is I want to make sure that we've actually got, we're starting to wrap around to the back. So I'm going to make the pieces that I need to know that we have that, and then I'm going to actually switch to showing the rear view so we can shape that out a little bit. So let's go ahead and extrude this piece. And let's see, I think in this case I'm going to go this direction, making a little bit of a contour shift here. Grab these and move them down. And I can kind of decide how I want to do this, but I know that if I'm making this little bit of, like, transition here, I can actually benefit from utilizing that towards the creation of these further edges. So I can go ahead and extrude that. Shift that over here. And then I'm also probably going to want to have another division here. I'm going to make a little bit of, like, a triangle section here, which is maybe not ideal, but so let's see. Oop. Accidentally hit smooth. All right. So, okay. That's good. Pretty decent. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our rear view. Actually, while we're here, we might want to nudge this a little bit. Well, no, actually, let's leave that alone for right now. So one thing that we want to do is we want to actually display. So I'm going to go to Windows Outliner, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on Shift H my back template. And then I'm going to hit Control H, hide my front template. But then under the panels, I can select orthographic, and I can make a new back view. And then also, just to make this a tiny bit easier, I could potentially also, hide different sections. Let me see if I can. I think I can go into this this view, and I can select these pieces and go to shading. Okay, we've already got backface culling turned on. So for right now, I'm just going to grab these pieces. I'm going to hit Control-H to hide them. And I actually think, let's see. Just to reduce clarity real quick, I'm actually going to go ahead and hit Control-H, and I'm going to hide those pieces. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the bumper section, and then I'm going to bridge those gaps. So then we'll like basically merge the two strips together. So let's go ahead and create. I have this viewport selected. I'm going to create a new plane. This time I might want to turn on my discrete rotate, hold down E and click, left click, discrete rotate. I can rotate that so that it's lined up so I can see it. Scale this however makes the most sense. Switch to my poly plane 4 here, change the, leave the width and height the same, change the subdivision's width to 2 and the subdivision's height to 1. And then we'll do the old familiar thing. But the one thing we got to be mindful of is we actually got to delete the opposite side this time so that it stays consistent. So I'm going to delete that face on the right. Then I'm going to go to Edit, Duplicate Special. And that's because we're looking at the back of this piece, not the front. So I'll select all these, right-click, select Assign Existing Material, Transparent Test. And I'm just going to go about basically creating the main shape of the bumper. And then we should essentially be able to bridge this into the other part that we have. So I'm going to go ahead, grab these verts. I'll slide this here. I'm also going to kind of respect the fact that I know that there's going to need to be this extrusion in here, which is useful. So I can go ahead and select my edges. I will extrude that. Switch to the global extrude because, again, we're in the orthographic view. And then I just want to make sure I've positioned these roughly so that they match the placement that we need. So I can grab each of these objects, slide them back, switch into the top view, grab this one here. I can select Edit Components, right-click, select Vertex, slide this one back here, grab these verts, slide them over here, and yeah, I think actually, actually, because this is not the, yeah, I think that that's supposed to follow the outer section of the bumper. So we'll just make sure that these are positioned where they're supposed to be. Okay. And now if I wanted to, I could start making some additional shapes here. But I think for right now, I just want to have a rough idea of where those pieces are. So I will go ahead and see where we're at on the side. Okay, and I see. Okay, yeah. So that's where our problem is going to arise. We're going to have to combine that with the other pieces. So okay, so I'm going to unhide my planes here. And it looks like we just basically need to figure out. We need to mind the gap in this case. And actually, it's a good thing that we did this because I realized that I was actually working with pieces that we're going to create more challenges. So I'll go ahead and delete these here. And then we'll make a cut using the insert edge loop tool to kind of bridge that piece there. So I'm going to go to insert edge loop, make that piece there. Then we'll go really quickly to the side. We'll look at that one as well. And then we can position these a little better. So I can grab my, this one, it's a little hard to do without looking at it in the perspective view, so we can kind of actually see what the shape is. Now we're probably going to still have to modify this a decent amount to get it so that it works correctly, because it's supposed to have kind of a smooth transition to it. So I'm going to go ahead and snap this vert to that vert. Snap this vert to that vert by holding the V key. Okay. Let's soften this up a bit. Let's take a look at that, the back here. So, okay, yeah, so we need to take this piece and pull it out here. This piece is probably going to be a little bit around there. And then we're going to have to bridge the gap here as well. So I'm going to so we could there's a few different ways we can handle that. So I'm going to go ahead and select these verts, and I'm actually going to, if you could select multiple verts and weld them if you have a threshold. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Edit Mesh, Merge, just to make sure. And you can also adjust the distance threshold, obviously. If you get too high, it gets crazy. But okay. And so so then that way I can check just to make sure. Oh, I think I hit undo. Edit Mesh, Merge. No. What's going on here? Okay, so. Oh, right. They're separate pieces. That's silly. Okay. All right, so what I need to do is I need to select this piece and this piece. Go to Mesh, Combine. And then you'll notice that I lose my my template here for a second. So I can go, I'm sorry, my mirrored perspectives. But I can go to Edit, Duplicate Special, get that back. And then I can go and I can merge verts together. So I can go ahead and select Edit Mesh, Merge, and there you go. I think that'll be good. Yeah, okay, cool. And then I think, let's see, what's a good option here? I'm going to go ahead and massage these a tiny bit. So I get a little more of the shape that I'm actually intending. And I think for right now, the only really smart thing for me to do is to just start another transitional edge that I can merge here. So I'm going to go to, actually I'll use the multi-cut tool. I'm going to go ahead and cut here. And that way I can have edges that I can merge together. So I'm going to go ahead and take this piece. Let's see. Look at the side view where we're at. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and snap this vert. I'm going to snap that vert. I can select those and merge, just to make sure we get that threshold. And so having a triangle isn't necessarily a bad thing. but I think in this case, it actually produces there's an n-gon here right now, so I can fix this pretty easily by just grabbing this vert, and then actually I can go to target weld. So go to mesh tools, target weld. I can just target weld that vert to that vert, and then it actually, now it preserves quads and also doesn't have any weird deformations. Okay. Let's see. So I just want to smooth this out a bit. Okay. All right, and actually that's pretty neat. We've got a good sort of checkpoint here where we've got the basic shape of the core body of the car, and then we can go through and we can add the additional bridging details and dimensions to make sure that we flesh out all the details.